chairman of EGX, Mohammed Farid. Thank you so much for joining Bloomberg Television. I want to start what's going on with short selling. You started issuing licenses just the past few weeks. Where are we, the state of play of that? When will they start? And what about their expectations and forecasts?
When it comes to short selling, we had a regulatory framework that was issued actually quite early in 2004. Then we had completed the technological requirements recently in 2018 and 2019 between the different parties participating in short selling. There were some requirements that EGX should have issued some time ago. We issued it, among which was the choice of the companies that would be allowed to be short sold using this mechanism. In addition to that, we had the regulator issuing completing the regulatory framework in this regard. We had some testing to test the entire system between the clearinghouse, the exchange, and the other brokers and participants in this area that are recently licensed. We're talking about 25 to 30 licensed brokers now that should be allowed to do short selling in the Egyptian market. We should be seeing this very soon, hopefully. The tests showed that things are going well in that direction.
Before the end of the year?
Before the end of the year, we're going to see short selling up and running, being implemented. And the main difference that we're talking about when it comes to short selling, that we're talking about a complete securities lending and borrowing mechanism associated or coupled with short selling. So basically, you will need to borrow before short selling the stock. You need to borrow it from a potential lender that is willing to lend his stocks for you, and so on and so forth. So we completed the cycle, let's put it this way.
I want to move on to IPOs. In July, you told Bloomberg that 3 Egyptian companies were going to come to market. What's the status of that?
Some of them decided to postpone it probably to next year out of the readiness of the companies themselves. They want to be more ready for the IPO. At the end, it's a process. They need to do the financial due diligence, the legal due diligence, and managerial due diligence as well that is being conducted to write a prospectus for investors. So the process itself, it's quite lengthy, and they need to abide by all listing rules and disclosure rules, among which are some of the governance rules associated with board composition, audit committees that are established from the board, and so on and so forth. So the process it takes some time, and hence companies can witness some delays in this aspect. However, having said that, the appetite, and given the last IPO that occurred in Egypt and the amount of oversubscription, we're talking about maybe 30 times when we're talking about the public offering, and for the private placement it was around 16 times.
This Fari, this summer.
It was this company, yes, exactly. And this over-demand or oversubscription showed investors and showed companies that actually there is a significant appetite.
That was a technology company. Do you see more interest in certain sectors over others?
Of course, technology, given the sheer size and the population of the country, when you have supporting, I would say, technology programs that support the real economy, so you can be having something in the technology field that is supporting transportation or supporting logistics and so on and so forth. This creates significant efficiencies that the market is always eager for, and hence we see the technology space is quite interested, especially after the new company that you mentioned in the technology sphere. An additional point that you get to see the education sector as well, given that we had 2 IPOs. Or one significant IPO for a company that manages schools and universities, and it's quite a very lucrative sector in Egypt in general, given the sheer size of and the population of the country itself. Adding to that is the healthcare sector. We had 2 companies, or 3 actually, companies that have been recently listed on the market, and this is creating significant demand from investors on these particular sectors, given their anti-cyclicality. They are not cyclical as the economy is. So we have some sectors definitely that are overriding the medical sector, as I mentioned, pharmaceutical sector as well. But going forward, it would be quite different. I mean, when it comes to the public sector IPOs, you will see some I would say financial sector companies are taking the lead in this area.
And those 3 you mentioned in July, at the moment they're holding off.
More or less, we have one company that is still holding in terms of the IPO, but we're still yet to see.
Would we see it before the end of the year?
Hopefully. I'm not sure, but hopefully we'll see it.
Okay. We just wrapped up which kind of brings me to a success story for Egypt. We just wrapped up a volatile August, but Egypt Stock Exchange was the best performer for the month of August, up nearly 11%. And of everywhere in the world, we saw, equities just tanking. Why?
I would say the story of Egypt is quite different. We had some issues that we managed to resolve, not as EGX, but in general in the market. There were some tender offers that they needed to be executed, and for this to be executed needed some coordination amongst different parties due to some, I would say, tax arrears on these particular companies. Once this has happened, it gave an indication that the business environment in Egypt is quite strong. It's not only about facilitating the process for people entering the market, but as well people exiting the market. You will be able to do it. You will find a reasonable economic policy setting that would be sitting and listening and resolving the problems or any issues. So once this has been resolved, with as well holding the stamp tax increase that we discussed with the parliament, and they agreed on holding the stamp tax increase, both of these factors and the successful IPO, the three of them merged together had an impact on Egypt's, I would say, equity story in August, and hopefully it will continue.